Yeah. Let's make a mission to come home to ourselves. That's what I want. I want people to come back to the truth of themselves, knowing their enoughness. And if we can walk through life knowing that, then I think we're doing a good job.
That was Lael Stone. I'm Rich Bolus, and this is the Dad Mindset Show. This is the first episode of the podcast that I've published on YouTube. So I'd love to hear your feedback on what you think of it. If you like it, please give it a thumbs up. If you don't like it, maybe don't do anything. Anyway, if you'd like to reach out with any ideas and suggestions, I'd love to hear those too. Just pop them in the comments on YouTube. Now, if you've been listening for a while, I want to say a massive thank you to you. And if you're new to the show, I'd love to give you a big welcome too. I'm really happy that Lael is the inaugural guest on the Dad Mindset YouTube channel because for over 2 decades, she's been helping people explore their unconscious beliefs, those imprints from childhood that drive our reactions, choices, and emotional responses as adults. Her new book offers not just insight, but tools to help us rewrite the patterns that hold us back. And in this episode, we talk about breaking free from our old stories, healing emotional wounds, and what it means to live and parent from a place of authenticity. So I hope you really enjoy this episode with Lael Stone. Hey, Lael, so good to see you. Let's just get straight into it because
Okay.
there's
I'm
so
so
much to talk about.
happy to be back chatting with you, Rich.
Oh, it's always a pleasure. So, what were you just saying about the
Oh,
book that I said, right, we've got to press record now?
yeah. So I was just talking about how, we are, and I say this in the book, we're mostly just children walking around in adults' bodies, right? And we're bouncing up against each other with our wounds and our stories. We kind of even seek them out, to try and justify where we sit. And I don't know, in my experience of working with people for the last 20 plus years, I really think there's probably only about 5% of people that are pretty conscious or actually in their adult self. Most of us operate from these younger parts of us, and not because there's something wrong with us, just because we haven't had the opportunity, I think, to do the work or know how to do the work to integrate those wounded parts and imprints that don't serve us so that we actually can be the best version of ourselves. And, for me, I look at it and think this generation of parents, particularly, and I mean, this applies to anyone, but specifically to parents, they are really the first kind of cohort that have the resources, the support, and the know-how to actually do the work to kind of work through some of the imprinted baggage and intergenerational trauma that's been passed on, because our parents didn't so much. I mean, maybe it was starting to happen, but our grandparents surely didn't. They were just trying to survive, and then our great grandparents were kind of navigating the war and all those other things. So really, I think it's this generation of adults at the moment who have access to information and support in a way that our the generations before us didn't. And so I think there's a lot of work going on or being called forward in the adults at the moment, and reflected back in these kids that come in who are just like, nah, I'm not going to do what you're saying, or pushing back on the way that it's always been done, because they're like, no, there's a better way. So we're at this really interesting and really pivotal time, I think, in history, where there is a calling to do your work, to look at your stuff, to kind of heal the past so that we actually can create a better future.
Yeah, I kind of think we need to just like everyone stops working and just go away for like an 18-month sabbatical
That's
and
yeah,
just like a
that's
deep
all the stuff.
dive, just
Yeah.
clear out all the baggage and then do a do-over. And
Yeah.
just
Yeah. Yeah.
then you can
Because
start being a parent.
yeah, totally. Because it's really hard, isn't it? Even like in the parenting context, because you've got these beautiful little people in your world who are constantly demanding stuff of you or needing stuff. And then we also have to hold a job and put food on the table. And maybe we still need to take care of our parents. There's a lot of demand on us at the moment. It's a lot. It's a very stressful time that we're living in. And so you're exactly right. Who has time to do the inner work? Like, we don't wake up in the morning and go, oh, today feels like a good day to sort out my inner child and all my trauma. Like, we don't actively go looking for it unless you kind of go to therapy. But usually we end up in therapy because something's wrong. Or we then have the beautiful mirror of our children who are standing there going, okay, you need to sort out this bit and this bit and this bit. And they're the ones that are kind of bouncing back to us that it's time to do the work. But it's not easy. Like we've got to have so much compassion for ourselves. And as I kind of say in the book, we often only come to doing this work when there is a crisis. Most people only start to question their stuff when they either lose their job, when they get sick, when someone they love dies, when a relationship busts up. It's usually through some kind of crisis that we actually start to go, well, who am I, and why is my life going in this direction, and is this what I really want? And it usually is through the rub that we end up leaning into doing and changing this work.
So how do we do it without going through the dark night of the soul, as you put it?
Well, I don't know if we do. We can. Well, look, no, that's not true. We can. We can actively be curious about who we are as humans. I mean, I think I feel very blessed, and I do mention this in the book as well, that I grew up with a mother who was very much into spirituality way before it was very cool. So I watched her go on retreats and travel overseas and learn stuff. And she was always questioning, who am I, and where do I sit, and why is this happening? And so I had this beautiful imprint from my mum, who was really questing a lot of the time to know herself deeply. And so I watched that, and that kind of, became a part of me too. I think I've always been a person that wants to know myself well. And I've always had a fascination with humans. Like, why do they do that? And what was your family like? And how did this work? Even as a little kid, I'd be fascinated just listening to people's stories because I wanted to understand how people work. And so I think because I had my mother, and also because there is an innate curiosity in me, I've always gone searching and seeking for, how do I be the best version of myself? How do I shift this story that keeps me really small, or that I feel trapped in? And so I think there's some people out there who are like, yes, I want to know more, but I think we have to have a big dose of compassion, that the majority of people grew up in an environment where that wasn't modeled to them, where their parents, their grandparents were kind of pretty content on some level with the status quo, even if it wasn't great. So they kind of just, they didn't watch, or they weren't exposed to adults doing that deeper inner work, or looking for answers, or that kind of stuff. So I think a big part of it is we're not role modeled. It's not role model to us, and so therefore it's not something that we kind of actively go, well, how do I better myself? We live in a world where we are much more much more comfortable being victims, where we can blame everybody else for the problems that are going on, until it gets too messy, and then you actually have to look at your own stuff. So I come back to this, that I think some people are very happy cruising along in life and never asking these questions, and that is okay. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. We're all doing life in the way we do it. But I think for those people who often are looking for, more joy in their life, or deeper love, or a greater connection with their children, then the way that we do that is by leaning into some of our shadows and some of the stuff that feels sticky, and kind of exploring it and disentangling from that, so that we can figure out who we really are.
Yeah. And the whole point that comes across as I read it was this idea that we just tended to repress feelings. They weren't actually worked through. And that was like, oh, great, he's dealt with it. Move on. Good. Tucked away, forget forever. And it's now later on that it's blowing out the gaskets at the side and so on, that it's causing these problems. And the immediate thought I have is, okay, I'm a parent and I know I've stuffed up some serious parts of my children's lives. How do I actually address that now? How
Yeah.
do I go back and
Yeah.
actually do that with them? What are your
Yeah.
thoughts there, Lael?
Beautiful. Beautiful. I love that. Well, the first thing I want to just say is, when we are looking back and going, oof, that didn't feel good, or if I made a mistake, that kind of stuff, the first most important piece of healing that is being kind and compassionate to ourselves. Because if we go, God, I've got to heal that, but we've got this huge whip out where we're just, beating ourselves because I did it wrong, then we're never often going to get the results that we want. Because when we're looking at something like healing, and we're looking at something like repair, then one of the most important pieces is compassion for ourselves, is to be in that space where we're like, yeah, I messed up because I didn't know any better, or I was doing the best I could, or I was really stressed. I really don't believe that we wake up each day and go, whose life can I make hell? Like, we don't. Like, I think we're inherently good humans. We are. Like, our natural state is connection and love. Like that is actually who we are as humans. That's how we're born. And then life kind of throws us around a bit, and we get hard and we get protective, and we get closed down, which makes sense because sometimes that's survival, right? But when we come to a point where we go, I want to look at what I can heal, particularly with my children. Well, the first place is we start with compassion with ourselves. And then the second place is we stay open to these conversations, again, age appropriate, depending on how our kids are, where we might go back to them and say, hey, guys, I've really been thinking about a few years ago. I was probably in a phase where I was really controlling and I didn't let you have a voice around certain things or whatever it was. I would love to hear how that feels for you now. And if there's something that you would like to hear from me to repair for that, is there, I would really love to sit in a place of growth here to see how that is for you, because I don't want that to be a story you carry. Now, a few things may happen in that. One part might be that your kids sit there and go, what are you talking about? Like, it's fine, Dad. Like, and it's actually not even a charge for them, but it's a charge for you, right? And so there's some times where kids are just like, no, that wasn't even a thing. Like, I mean, I've seen over the years in raising my kids, there's been stuff that's happened and I've thought, oh my God, that's going to be the biggest trauma. Oh my God, that's so not good. And then my kids, it's not even a blip. Whereas things that I've done that I thought were fine, they're like, that was so traumatic and I can't believe you did that. And I'm like, what? It wasn't even a thing. So, it's all about perception. It is all about perception, because our take on scenarios is going to be different. Everybody in a room, something happens, everyone's going to have a different take on it. We look through the lens of our own life. So when we're looking at going back to speaking to our kids, particularly, we can have that conversation. This doesn't sit well for me, and I'm wondering how that was for you. They might be like, nah, it's cool, Dad. It's like not an issue. And you're like, okay. And, then the conversation may go something like, well, I really would love you to speak to me if there's something that feels off or there's something that does not feel good in your being or your body, then I'm here to hear it. And I really am open to listening to how that is for you. Now, that can be a tough conversation to have, and it can feel uncomfortable, because if we're welcoming our kids to be really truthful, they may say things back that feel a bit ouchy, but it takes courage, and it also takes the adult self to sit there and go, I hear you, and I'm really sorry if that hurt for you, and how could we do it differently? And that can be profoundly healing at any age. I mean, any age. I know adults who would just love for their 70-year-old parent to come back and say the same thing to them, right? So it's never, ever too late, I think, for that healing to happen. But I also think, too, when we're looking at something like imprints, which is what I talk a lot about in the book, is that, again, you can raise 2 or 3 children and they can all have a different imprint on something, because they're going to look at it through the lens of, which birth order they come through, what their temperament is, how they see the world, and they're all going to take it in different ways. And our job is not to be perfect within it. That's not the job of parenting. The job of parenting is to be connected enough to our kids so that if something does bump up against them or something does feel wobbly, that we're there to say, hey, let's talk about it. Let's unpack it. Let's turn towards it instead of turning away from it, as you mentioned before. So I think when it comes to healing the past, the best work we can do is healing ourselves. So it's the compassion, it's the forgiveness, it's looking at what patterns we want to change. And by osmosis, that often gets carried on to our children.
Yeah. I love the questions or reflections you have at the end of each chapter as well. That was like, oh man, I've got to dive deep into this. And it's almost like you could write it feels like about 3 to 6 months of work to actually go through it properly. To actually go, okay, I'm going to just think of this one question each day or something, and then jot it down. But I reckon the benefit from going through it that way would be profound. And that's certainly my homework I've set for myself. But just when you were saying that, Lael, it reminded me of the story that you talked about when you went back to your dad's with your brothers, and how that plopped you straight back into the old patterns. And and that really resonated for me, because I was like, oh yeah, I can hear that. You
Yeah.
go back to the old environment and immediately you're in that state,
Yeah,
and you
I,
just
I often, I mean, people say this, but I often speak it too. I go, if you think you've got your shit together, just go hang out with your family for a week, right, and see what happens, because it's so, if we don't see our families a lot and then we go back and hang out with them, it's so interesting how we will automatically slip back into the roles that we played in the past, even though we're like, damn it, I don't want to do that anymore. It can be very interesting to watch how we lose ourselves or we step back into those roles that we know so well.
And that must happen in relationships as well, especially because, I mean, someone's married for, say, 25 years or something, there's going to be traumatic points and there's going to be rupture along the way. And I guess you can morph into someone else as well throughout that whole, because we're all evolving in different directions at the same time. And I suppose it's almost like, I feel like there's like an engine check engine light moment that we almost need to do once a year and go, yeah, where are we at? Like, let's just unpack this and reset for next year. Right? And
Yeah.
that's the sort of language that I certainly don't
Yeah.
use.
I think it's, I don't know, I really, I guess what I wanted to get to in the book was so much about really what we're all doing is trying to find our way home to who we are. And part of being the most authentic version of ourselves is understanding, I think, the places we've come from and the patterns and stories and beliefs and imprints we've taken on board, and really sitting with, do they serve us or not? And there's going to be some amazing stuff that makes us, fabulous and that we want to carry forward. And then there's the kind of hidden unconscious stuff that I think is the work to look into, to say, does this actually serve me? Is this who I want to be? Am I behaving this way? That's because, it was it was just, it was part of our narrative in our family that you're only you're only lovable, you're only successful if you earn lots of money, or you must work hard at all costs. And then that's the badge of honor that we carry in our family. Look how hard we all work, right? We've all got so much grit, and everyone applauds that. And then if there's a person in the family who goes, oh no, I'm going to sit down and take a rest, we all look at them and go, what are they doing? They're so lazy. Right? In our family, we are about grit. That's our badge of honor, right? And we carry that through, and we might reach a point where we're like, does that actually serve me anymore? Like, yes, maybe it's been amazing in helping me achieve things in life, but at what cost? And we can look at things like our relationship to money. We can look at things like our relationship to intimacy, to the way we feel about our bodies, to anything. And I think the inquiry is going, what is my belief system here? And is that actually where I want to be? And, this book isn't just for parents, it's for anyone. But for parents particularly, I say to them, one of the biggest things that helps us shift and change these stories is when you look to the future and you look at your children. And if I was to meet your kids in 20 years and say, hey, what was your imprint around self-care? Or what was your imprint around anger? Or what was your imprint around, success? What are they going to say? Because what they're probably going to say is what you've modeled to them. And that is often a very good invitation to perhaps take stock of where we're at and create some changes, because what do we want our children to carry forward?
Yeah. I think some of the other points as well around the questions that we can ask, like the what am I making this, are really good prompts for like when we're in the moment, but looking to the future. And it does feel like and you talk about, it really is a choose your own adventure that we just don't maybe appreciate
Yeah.
in the now. And if we just take a bit of time to delve in and decide what it is we want to do and how we want to play and show up in life, we can have way more fun than we
Yeah.
often give ourselves
Yeah.
permission
Well,
to do.
totally. I think, I think we've been taught over many, many generations that we are at the mercy of life. And in some circumstances, yes, we are. We can't control what happens in life. But I do believe that our intention and our energy matters greatly, because, we have the power of possibility. I always sit in this, right? I believe that possibility opens up so many doorways for what we want. Yet when we have been shown or modeled that, life's not fair and that doesn't happen to people like us, or, this is how it always is, we get locked into this really limited way of thinking that that's how life is going to be for me. And what's very interesting, and one of the things that I find the most fascinating in doing this work with people, is that particularly when we grow up in environments where there's this, locked in thinking of, but this is how we do it, when we want to step out of that and we want to do something different, it can feel so terrifying because we can feel like we're being disloyal to our family of origin. If our family of origin has always struggled, and then all of a sudden we're like, oh, I'm going to have some flow in my life and these opportunities, we can often feel immense guilt that we're actually having that going on because we feel this loyalty to our family. Like, our big thing is about belonging. And if I'm successful and I'm over here doing this, then there can be these threads and pull to be like, well, I'm abandoning you guys. And, this is our narrative of what we had. Equally can work the other way. People are like, get me out of here. I want to go over there. And there can be these fiery things that fuel them to prove that I'm enough. I'm not going to be like you. I mean, there's so many nuances within all of it, right? It's not just as black and white as that. But I think what's really interesting is our loyalty to our family of origin, even if we don't like it, is often something that calls the shots for many of us.
Yeah.
and
And
and that is tricky.
and you talked about how there are certain things that we might have experienced that we really didn't like, but they end up showing up. It's almost
Yeah.
like we seek them out as almost like a
Yeah.
a,
Yeah.
a test of our ability to overcome those things.
Yes.
Like
Yes.
bad relationships and
Yeah.
things like that.
Yeah. Well, I look at it this way and go, we have experiences through life, and our innate sense is actually to heal from those experiences. Like, the body's so clever. The body knows how to heal when we give it the opportunity. Trauma is not something that we're meant to carry around. We're meant to process it, feel it, let it go. We're meant to come back to our homeostasis state of that center point of who we are. Like, that is actually what we're evolving to do, is to grow, to learn, all that kind of stuff. But again, I think we come back to that we aren't taught ways to actually do that. We're not taught ways that we have a big shock or a trauma of how do we help your body navigate that? How do we help your mind process it? How do we do those things? We don't. We're often taught, oh, well, just forget about it or push it down or, those kind of things, which, there's a time and place for healing as well. I absolutely get that. But I kind of always come back to that, we're not set up often in our world that we currently live in to move towards thriving. We're just not, because again, these generations that come before us that were doing the best job they knew how, we are now at this really interesting turning point where we have this information to say, how can we change this? How can we heal what has come before us to actually move forward? But it takes a lot of courage to do it as well. I really do think that. And I think the other part that feels tricky is that it's we can have a strong default to making other people wrong if they don't. And I think that's what we need to be mindful of. Not everybody is wanting to do the work, and not everybody's equipped to do it. And they know better or less than, if we do. I think we each have this individual journey, and I don't know, I sit in the place of like, how do you make your life the best life possible? Like, you have this one opportunity to live this life right now. And often it's what we tell ourselves and what goes on in our mind that gets in our way.
Yeah. And I love the idea that, if we look at everyone in the streets as we walk down it, and if we know the backstory of everyone, we would have so much more compassion for every single stranger, because we've all gone through so much different stuff and we have all different adventures up to now. And I think that whole idea of compassion is one that we really need to keep front of mind, because so much of our behavior is driven almost unconsciously through these issues, these imprints that we've built up. We're not even in control half of the time. Well, most of the
We're
time.
not even, yeah, but part of the time we're not even aware. And I think when I look at what are the first steps that we take to do this, the first steps are always just watching where you feel out of balance, watching where you lose it. Where do you get angry? Where do you get frustrated? Where do you get really judgy? Like, just watch your thoughts, because that's where you got to follow. You got to follow the uncomfortable stuff. Whenever we're in the I'm right and you're wrong thing, that's always another good one to, lean into. I think there's the first steps we want to take as we do this work is to start to bring some, I use the word mindfulness, but it really is, it's starting to bring some consciousness to how we move through life, to how we operate. And you just look for, where are the same patterns that keep popping up? Do you keep clashing heads with your dad? Is it that there's, you keep getting looked over for promotions at work? Is it that, one of your kids just drives you absolutely nuts, right? Like, go where the tension point is. And then that's where we start asking these questions. What am I making this mean? What is the theme that's here? What was modeled to me around what's popping up in this moment? I think that's where we get to start doing a bit of that deeper inquiry, where we can start to shift and change, where life is taking us.
Yeah, it was quite uncomfortable actually reading certain
Totally
bits. I was
uncomfortable.
like, I was like, ah, sheesh. Yeah, yeah. That's
Yeah.
it wasn't the situation like going through the book in the sense of, yep, there I can totally relate to that, and
Yeah.
oh, how am I going to unpick this one?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't even
It's,
want to
you
talk
know
about
what?
what it
I
was.
I love your honesty within that. It is uncomfortable. It's not comfortable work, because we have to get real. We have to get real with ourselves, and we have to get honest with ourselves. And I think that again, that is not something that's being modeled to us
I,
as a culture, right? We
to
are
to
all
be,
about
I
looking
reckon
the other way.
I've just been papering over those
Yeah,
those areas. Like this is
totally.
just paper, like a really nice
It's
smooth
fine.
wallpaper over
Yeah,
that. That's
it's
fine.
good.
That's
Look
and
how
there's
pretty
like
it is.
mold and
Yeah,
decay behind it.
yeah,
Like,
totally. Or I'm like, let's just look over here. Look at
yeah,
this shiny thing. Let's not look
ah,
at that.
yeah.
Let's look at this shiny thing.
But and then it goes back to that idea of these imprints of the stories that we're telling ourselves, but it's a map that we've built, but it isn't the territory. And so we've all got these wonky, out of date, sort of different level maps that we're working off, and we're trying to communicate with each other and interact and navigate what life when all our maps are completely defunct, and how we actually imagine that we can do this in
Yeah,
a
yeah,
coordinated way is
yeah.
wild.
And I think I think what's really important to know is that, we don't have to do all this work all at once, right? This is a work in progress that is going to, these pieces are going to unfold for you, whether you like it or not. And I think life is constantly showing us. It's whether we want to turn towards it and look at it. And again, like we kind of mentioned at the beginning of this podcast, most of us are trained to look the other way, to go, I don't want to deal with this. Let's make it someone else's fault, so I don't have to lean into it. And that is okay. And for some people, that will be their whole life, and that's all right. But then other people will bump up against it and either feel so pissed off or uncomfortable, or something will happen that will make them stop, that's when they actually start to go, I need to unpack a bit of what's here. And for me, I get so excited when people are like, "Oh God, it's all falling apart." I'm like, I mean, that sounds terrible, but I'm like, amazing. Here you are. Here's the gold, right? This is the beauty of what we want to get to, because from here, this is where you get to find your power and your freedom to live the life you want to live. We have to look at the uncomfortable stuff, and it's always, our minds are so funny, aren't they? Because we always think it's going to be way scarier than what it is. We always don't want to turn towards it because we're like, I can't open that box. It's going to be too painful. But I love to remind people about how powerful and strong they are. And that, when it comes to things like feeling uncomfortable stuff, yes, we need support around us, but we only have to feel it for like 7 or 8 minutes, right? We just have to feel the hurt or the fear or the sadness or the loneliness or whatever it is. We feel it for 7 or 8 minutes. We cry, we let it go. We have taken a step towards, I'm not going to carry that as my baggage. I'm going to take a step towards, what do I want this to now look like? That is the story. I cannot change the past, but I can find a place of healing within it. I can learn how to make peace with it. I can take it from the challenges of what it was and then turn it into some beautiful wisdom that I get to then carry forward. Now, that's not as easy to do just in half an hour, right? Like, it takes a bit of work. It's not just, okay, let's do it. And sometimes we need therapy, and sometimes we need support, and sometimes we need time to do it. But I think it's through those things, if there is an openness and a willingness to do it, then that is where our greatest transformations sit. I share a bit in the book about, my journey with PTSD from, like, 17, 18 years ago with my daughter. And, what I went through in that journey, I wouldn't wish upon anyone. It was a really scary experience, and there's a lot of powerlessness that went on there. But I would not change that experience ever. It was one of the greatest gifts that was ever given to me, even though it was one of the most powerful dark times I've ever been through. Because the gift of healing that I navigated afterwards, just, it brought me home to myself. It taught me about who I am. It was the premise for all this work I do in the world now. I feel so blessed to have had that experience, to be able to change and take that trauma into something that has helped me not only heal, but help, maybe hopefully light a path for others to know that there is a way through when things are really hard. And I guess a lot of the time that comes down to perception, because in another reality, I could go through that experience and it could still be crippling me. And, I could still be in high levels of anxiety and panic. And, and that is a reality for some people. I absolutely appreciate that some pain and trauma is really, really big. But I do make a stand for healing, and I do make a stand for possibility, because I believe as humans, we are meant to live beautiful, connected lives. And sometimes we just have to do work to find our way to get there.
Yeah, I hadn't realized that story until I read that part. And it made me well up when you said, "Ah, I trust you," to your daughter, as you sort of leant over when she was in the incubator. And like we don't we don't realize in those moments that they are life changing. It's just the worry that we have is off the charts, and it's only when we look back and make sense of it that we realize that it had so much to sort of
Yeah.
show us, I
Yeah.
guess, about who we are and how we want to show up in the world. And so it's it's I think as humans we really don't we don't value long-term gain over short-term pain. And it's one of the biggest challenges to just go, if I just cross this threshold, I've got all this worry and fear, and it's going to be so scary. But I find that when I look back at the things that I did actually lean into, it always becomes the best thing afterwards.
Of
It's,
course
and I
it
know
is.
you can't say that about,
Yeah.
everything, but a lot of the things that we worry about the most, like I look at the things that I suck at or did suck at the most, and I finally leant in and pushed through, and now it's the thing I love the most.
Yeah.
It's wild.
I don't think we ever regret doing the work. I don't think so. Like, I've worked with adults for over 20 years now and taken so many people through all sorts of different processes. And the shift you see in people and the steps they take towards coming home to themselves, they never regret, because that, again, that's, I think, where we're meant to be. We just we're just doing this complicated thing called life to try and figure that out. And, when we look at, well, and so many parents will say to me, but how do I make it easier for my kids? I don't want them to have to go through all the baggage I've gone through, right? And I'm like, yeah, for sure. Each generation, it gets a bit easier. For sure, it does, right? And there's other stresses. And for me, I go, well, the best gift you can give your kids is to keep doing your own work, is to not place your burdens and stuff on their shoulders. And as you do the work, as they witness you doing that, as you take responsibility for your stuff, that becomes their imprint. Their imprint is a default of, I wonder what's going on for me here, and why am I feeling like this, and what do I need to do? That becomes a narrative that they begin to take on board because they're witnessing you do it. Then what happens is, when life bumps up against them, which it will at some point, they are able to stand in their anchor and go, yeah, okay, there's something going on for me here. Who do I turn to for support? Who can I speak to? Or how do I unpack this? And that's what I get the most excited about, because I see this next generation of children coming through with parents who are willing to do the work. And my God, the level of emotional awareness these kids have blows me away. I am just like, like, I just get so excited, because I'm like, this is the work that we're doing for the long game, as you say. It is the more that we do our inner journeying here, the more we model that to our kids. And then, ideally we're able to walk beside them saying, hey, I'm here if you need, and I know that's wobbly and I've got you, but you trust their journey, and they learn to trust their journey. And then that's when life has a different level of flow. And that's, that for me is what the world needs right now in a whole bigger picture.
Yeah. I love the language that you use, Lael. And it's something I almost wish there's like a TV show where you just watch this sitcom and there's like, optimal language used all the time, because I feel like I need a crib sheet.
Yeah.
Like what are the lines? Because we've got all these like erroneous lines that we've watched and had modeled to us.
Yeah.
So that there does. I feel like I'm trying to cheat on a test or something. But it does. Like, what would you suggest as some just go to sort of
Yeah.
opener communication lines that we use with our kids, do you think, to
Yeah.
help with this language?
Yeah. Like, I mean, the first one I always come back to and I know we've chatted about this before, but it's actually not so much about what we're saying, it's actually about the listening. And so the first place, always, when our kids are unhappy, they're grumpy, something's not going right, the first thing we want to do is almost center ourselves and silence ourselves and just do a lot of nodding and go, yep. And say things like, tell me more. or that sounds hard, or what else. Like we're just using these beautiful little prompts to say, hey, like share what's on your mind, share what's on your heart, like bring it. Because the first piece for healing, particularly with children, is that they feel seen and they feel listened to. So really the first steps we want to always do is just keep those really short, sharp sentences which are about, yeah, bring more to me. I'm here. I'm listening. That sounds hard. Like we're saying what I often used to remind myself, say what you see, which is, I can see you are really upset here. Tell me more. Like, or, gosh, I can see there's a lot of pain there for you. What else? Like, so I'm just acknowledging what is in front of me. I'm inviting them to keep going within talking about it. And then, I mean, I think once kids have felt heard, or they're able to speak what it is, like, I always used to keep it really short and sweet again with my kids, where I'd just say, once they'd kind of dumped whatever was feeling big for them, I would say, what do you think this what do you want this to look like moving forward? What would you like the outcome to be here? Now sometimes they're going to say an outcome that's not possible. Sometimes they're going to be, I don't know, I'm stuck, all that kind of stuff. And again, what we come back with is just like, this sounds really tricky, and I want you to know I'm right beside you. And we might not have the answers yet, but I'm here. Right. So we're just again acknowledging sometimes we have to sit in the crap a bit longer. Sometimes we don't have the answers, but I want you to know I'm right beside you. Or a beautiful line that I actually heard from Lisa. I don't know how to say her name, Lisa Demur. She does a lot of stuff on teenagers. She said this beautiful line the other day I heard, and I was like, oh my God, that is gold. She said something like, what can I do to not make this any worse? And I was like, that's excellent. What an excellent line. What can I do to not make this any worse? Which is a beautiful thing to say, particularly to teenagers, I think, because they're like, yeah, okay, you can get out of my room, or you can make me some food, or, you can just, whatever. Like, it's beautiful. I think it just is, it's offering a bridge of connection to say, I'm here with you and I'm willing to sit in the hard with you. So, language can be clunky, right? If it doesn't feel right to us. And sometimes we have to practice it. And again, I come back to, most people weren't modeled this kind of languaging or ways to connect with each other. So it can feel really foreign when we're starting to do it for the first time. But the more that you practice it, the more you have these conversations, the more it feels familiar for you, and you make it your own. The authenticity of it is really what we're going for.
Yeah. And what sort of language do you reckon we should be using in our heads and using on ourselves?
Oh, okay. So that's a big one. That's a whole other thing, isn't it? Because, our inner chat is usually pretty harsh. Most people have got a pretty mean person that sits in their head that says stuff to them that, they would never say to somebody else. And for me, I don't know, I just kind of found a blanket statement many years ago when I was beating myself up about something. I remember just almost like getting really fierce and going, no, I am not going to let myself talk that way about myself anymore. And I remember just almost taking a stand internally, going, the actual truth of all of this is that you are love and you are compassion, and all the other stuff, all the other shit that you talk about yourself is a narrative and is society, and all of those things are not true. Because the actual truth of all of us as humans is that we are enough and we are lovable the way we are. We were born that way. Like I say all the time, when anybody has had a baby and they hold their baby in their arms for the first time and they look deeply into their eyes, I know that there is no parent sitting there looking at that baby going, I don't know if you're enough, right? No parent's doing that. They're looking at their baby going, oh my God, they are the universe in my hands, or they are incredible. Like we look at the perfection of our beautiful babies, right? We were born that way, all of us. And then life and society tells us something different. And this is why I keep talking about the job is to come home to ourselves again. We're coming home to that place of where we were born into our enoughness. And so when we're doing the whole harsh inner talk, I guess over my life, what I've learned to do now is that whenever those thoughts come in, I just go, none of them are true. Now, yes, I might have to be curious about, perhaps I did something that didn't feel that good, but I go to the people that I trust, whose word I trust, to go, can I bounce this off you? And what do you think? Am I making up stories in my head, or is there something here to be attuned to? But I'm only going to the people that I trust, to who I know love me and know me, to kind of feel that out. But short of that, I go, no. The answer is actually compassion. I'm not going to let myself have those thoughts because I know for myself and all humans that we are innately enough. We are innately beautiful, magnificent creatures. We just have lost our way. And so, if I can start having that kind, compassionate talk within, then that allows me to do that for others. And that for me is the biggest truth. I see myself as a very compassionate person and hold space for a lot of people. And I think I can do that well because hold that space for myself.
Yeah. And it's just looking beneath the surface, isn't it? Just
Mm.
like we talked about before, that compassion for
Mm.
everyone is doing their
Yeah.
best
Yeah.
with this with the skill set that they have,
Yeah.
and just trying to see
Yeah.
that light
Yeah.
within, and it makes things so
It's
much
so
easier.
it's so tricky. I'll never forget, I've been so blessed to hear thousands of stories over the years, right? From when I worked in birth and then parenting and with teenagers. And so I've just heard the worst of the worst atrocities that happen to humans and also some beautiful stories. I remember many years ago I was running group circles and ran mainly around parenting, and people would come, and there was a guy that would come to these sessions, and he was challenging to be around. I would watch people bristle a bit, and he would often have to fill up the spaces in the room with chatting all the time, and so it was an interesting dynamic to have in a group, right? And so I would watch everyone get a bit shitty around him, and I was also kind of like, oh, this is tough to handle. And but I would just try to keep my heart open. And then I had the opportunity to have a session where we chatted about life, and he shared a lot more of his story with me. And as I was listening to his story, I was just like, oh my god, I this makes complete sense as to why you are the way you are. He'd grown up with a lot of pain in his family of origin. A lot of the dark stuff that can happen in lives to humans happened to him. And as I sat there listening to him, and my heart was just so feeling for him for the journeys he'd had, I was like, of course, you behave this way because this is safety for you. And I'll never forget that meeting with that guy, because it just really made me get on that really visceral level. Every single one of us has a story. Every single one of us is trying our best. Every single one of us is coming from protection. We're always trying to keep ourselves safe. And sometimes the way we do that, bumps up against other people. And then what we do as the other people is we turn and we judge, and we talk about them and we make them wrong. And I don't know, I've just come to this place in my life where I'm like, again, as we said earlier, if we could see everybody's story behind them, we would have nothing but compassion. And some days it's hard. I get that. Sometimes we just want to be judgy, and sometimes, our feelings are hurt, and, we're all human. We all have that. Like, I have times where I'm like, ooh, that felt a bit catty. And I was like, okay, what's here for me? But the next step is what's here for me. So when I'm starting to be judgy, my first step now is to be like, oh, what's this person reflecting to me? Am I jealous? Do I want what they want? Maybe I do. That's why I'm trying to tear them down, right? Trying to pick holes in them, because I'm actually like, actually, I really want what you've got going on in your life, right? Maybe it's that. Maybe it's they're bumping up against a theme that I've known from the past, and I'm having a reaction to that. But the invitation is always, what is this person showing me? you know, we want to judge the person and make them wrong because we get to feel superior. We get to be like, I'm right, I'm better than you, and and again, whenever we're doing that, I think that is the invitation to be like, oof, where's our ego sitting? What are we doing here? That I think is the work, the
Yeah.
invitation to watch. What is this person reflecting to me? What place are they standing in my world at the moment that is inviting me to look at something that's going on?
Yeah, and I love that question of what age am I right now, or
Yeah,
or,
yeah,
or what age are you when you talk
yeah.
about your partner? And it was like,
Mm,
whoa, that is such a bright light to shine on a
mm,
conversation,
yeah.
because it immediately. I had a situation recently where it was like this business function, and this guy started just teasing my name, like really picking in on it. And I was like, whoa, this is taking me
Mm.
back to the playground. This
Yeah.
is I haven't felt this for a while. I was like,
Uh,
whoa, like I didn't even know how I want to respond or deal with this.
yeah.
I didn't even
Yeah.
think this was a thing anymore.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's like I went on a little journey. It's
Ah,
like,
oh, well
right back
done
to
for
being 7 years old.
yes, yes, and well done for being able to catch that, Rich, because that's the thing, because our default is to look at that guy and go, he's an asshole, and but actually. in that moment, how beautiful to be like, oof, there's an edge here for me. There's something going on. I mean, writing this book was hard for me because my teenage self was alive and well for most of it. and, and mate, I had to wrestle with her because she, when you're working with a publisher, they have things that they want. I'm used to just doing stuff my own way, and I had to compromise in this book, and I did not like it. And the teenage me is like, don't tell me what to do. I'm doing it my way. And that was a real edge I had to battle with. And it had nothing to do with the publishers, nothing to do with, they're just doing their job. But I watched myself want to push up against it on again and again. And so I kept making them wrong and I wanted to be angry at them. But I was actually like, this is all yours, Lael. This is nothing to do with them. This was all those years of teenage me feeling, just it brought up my edges around feeling powerless. And I could tell because I was almost like, I'd finish writing something and I'd get up and I'd be really grumpy and I'd almost be talking like a 14-year-old. And my husband's like, what is going on? And I'm like, I would be just in my stuff and he'd be like, you look like you need to go for a walk. And I'd had to go for a walk and talk about it. And, it was a gift because it helped integrate a big part of me that was still there, and
Did
I
it feel
think,
like homework? Was it
oh
like,
yeah, it was like horrible homework. It was like doing a year 12 essay that never ended. That's what it felt like.
oh man.
But that's the joy, right? Because it pushes you out of your comfort zone. It's like, it's even like building my school. Like, that was one of the hardest things I have ever done. Like, I cannot even tell you the edges that popped up in the 3 years of building it and then in the 5 years that it's been around. There's so many pieces that are challenging, and it makes sense to me why people don't do things that are hard because it's hard, right? But I'm like, nah, I'm going to do it. I'm going to see what's possible. But the gift of that is meeting these places within myself. It is not the school, it is not the people, it is not the parents. It is what I make it mean. It's what edges pop up in me. And that for me is the invitation, is what life brings us. When the edges are there, can we pause? Can we take a beat and go, what am I making this mean here? What is coming up for me? How old am I? Like, what is sitting in my body at this moment? And what is the gift in that? Because there's something here that's being asked to heal, to help you transform, to get closer to who you are. And that is, I think, if we can look at life through that lens, then we're gonna be powerful, amazing humans, because we're gonna own our stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. So what do you see then? I mean, the future, if when a million people read your book and work through it,
Oh,
what
I
does the
love
future
that.
look
Can you
like?
just say that again? When a million people read my book, let's go with that.
Yeah, yeah,
Thanks.
yeah, yeah. No, seriously, like what do you see the future looking like?
Hmm. Well, for me, what my vision is for the future is people own their stuff. So, like, something happens with someone, and if someone goes, "Oh, I'm having a reaction here. Just give me a minute. There's something going on for me." And then the other person's like, "Oh yeah, no worries. What do you need? Do you need me to ask you some questions? I'll just be quiet while you figure out what's going on." Like, we respect our process, right? We respect that when we're having a reaction, there's something happening here. So we have enough consciousness to realize that when we're pushing up against those edges, when we're feeling out of control, when we're getting angry, that we're able to tune into each other and go, "You okay? What's happening for you here?" And that there is a level of kindness and consideration around our stories and our pain and our wounds, so that we actually can lean into our work. I mean, that to me is, that would be it. Like, I love, even, at my school, because we're trying to really bring a level of emotional awareness, that a lot of the conversations I have with the staff or the team or, the leaders of our school have always been around what's here for you. So when we have a meeting and one of them's angry or upset about something, I'm like, okay, let's go there. What's here? What's here for you? What's this about? What's the bigger picture of this? Where's it remind you of? How old do you feel? We're having these conversations in a workplace so that that person is able to process what is happening for them, so they don't then go and project it and behave in a way that doesn't feel good somewhere else, right? They're trying to catch it. And for me, that is the powerful work. And it's the same within parenting, that when we're having a reaction, we can pause and take a moment, which is not always possible, but we're able to go, oof, I'm really activated here. This is on me, right? And we step away. We don't make it our kids' fault. We own what is ours. We repair if we need to, and then we move on.
I love it. Bring it on, Lael.
Okay. That will just,
Well,
that's the
that's
new vision.
no. It's really inspiring because I think you can imagine how much pain goes away when people can have those conversations, and it's so easy to walk away from those situations and feel hard done to, and then that's just another layer of paint, like paper, covering up the real you, and it feels like there's a great opportunity to start scraping back that paint and really sort of uncovering who we really are. And
I just feel like, I think we were talking about, that we're in our 50s, coming to 50 now, or at this time in our life where I'm just like, the time is now. Like, here's what I think. Like, I'm like, it is it. And I just take a stand, as crazy and as out there and as hippie as it sounds. I shouldn't even say that, but it's just true. I just take a stand for love now, for love and compassion, and being courageous and brave to do our work, because our world is a bit nuts. It's not a bit nuts, it's a lot nuts. There's a lot of pain. We're at this really big tipping point where I think we have to come back to connection and love, and it starts with us. And so I'm like, any little nudge that I can give people to be courageous enough to lean into their stories, then I'm going to do it, because I want to remind everybody that of their enoughness. I'm going to remind them that life is actually here. It wants to support you. Like, life is here for you to love and to laugh and to connect and to feel good. We've just kind of lost our way. And I think that, we need to be reminded of this. So I'm just going to keep giving people nudges to do it,
I
because
love
you
it.
never regret it.
No, and it makes me laugh because life is far too important to be
Yes.
taken seriously. And
Yes.
I found myself like walking the dog this morning, and I was listening to this song, and I just wanted to dance. And I
Oh,
don't dance. I'm not a dancer. I am not a dancer. And I was like, I can't do that. This is
yes.
crazy. Like, this is like neighbors will think I'm insane. Like, there's this guy in his puffer jacket and shorts
Yeah.
dancing with his dog. And I did a little bit and I felt so self-conscious. But I actually made myself laugh out loud. And I
Oh,
was
that's
like,
so
you know
good.
what? We've just got to lean in and play because,
Yeah.
yeah, we don't get two shots at this. This is one
No.
and done. And so
Yeah.
we may as well have a
Yeah.
ball
Yeah.
and do what we can to help
Yeah.
others have a ball.
Yeah, that's it. And I just think, you're so right. Like, play is often one of the best ways we can start with, when we're trying to find the joy in our, and laughing at ourselves, laughing at our, the massive human complexities of what we are as, just being a person, when we can play and laugh, and, it lightens it all up so we can move towards it in a really amazing way. But I don't know. I have a lot of hope. I do. I know the world is in a pretty crazy place, but I work with enough adults these days and enough parents who are willing to to lean in, and I see the impact of that on their children, and I go, yeah, this is where it begins to change.
Well, I have a lot of hope because you're here, Lael, and you're
Oh,
amazing. And I
mm,
really appreciate you and all the work you do. So
thank you.
let's make it 10 million people. Yeah,
Yeah,
by great. Let's go 100 million people. Just need to get this book and do the work because,
I'm happy with that.
yeah, it's
Oh, thank you,
it's
Rich.
it's so good what you do, Lael. So,
Mm.
and so many people I talk to are just like, oh, Lael Stone, you just got to get onto our work because it's amazing.
Oh,
And
thank
I don't know
you.
whether people tell you that enough. They should tell you more, but what you do is amazing. And it just shines a light on how we can all access a much more, just be more of us and actually let go of all the pretense and all the masks and just have some fun and enjoy life with each
Yeah.
other.
Yeah. Let's make a mission to come home to ourselves. That's what I want. I want people to come back to the truth of themselves, knowing their enoughness. And if we can walk through life knowing that, then I think we're doing a good job.
Awesome.
Mm,
Way to land the
thanks,
plane.
Rich.
Thank you, Lael. Well, thanks for listening. If you'd like to find out more about Lael's new book, I'll include a link in the show notes at thedadmindset.com. If you're new to Dad Mindset, I'd love to say hi and encourage you to click subscribe so that future episodes appear in your feed and you won't miss them. If you've been listening to the show in audio format for a while, I want to say a massive thank you and ask that if you have a friend or colleague that you can think of that could benefit from these conversations, if you could share your favorite episode with them, that would be awesome. In the meantime, I hope you have a great week and enjoy your caffeinated beverage.